the shadow of the Austrian Alps, in a snow-laden village marked by long winters, Johann Jack Unterweger was born in 1950 into a life already fractured. His father was an American soldier who vanished before Jack ever knew his face. His mother, a young woman entangled in fleeting affairs, struggled to survive under the weight of poverty. Jack grew up not only fatherless but often motherless, left behind with relatives or strangers for months at a time. The neighbors remembered the quarrels, raised voices echoing through thin walls, the sharp crash of plates, and the sudden silences when his mother disappeared for days. While other children played together in the snow, Jack wandered alone through narrow, icy streets, his solitude an invisible cloak he could never shed. At school, teachers noted his drifting attention, his eyes wandering toward the window as though his mind lived in another world. Yet they also recorded episodes of sudden violence. Once, when teased by a classmate, Jack lashed out so brutally that it took several adults to pull him away. This was not ordinary misbehavior, it was a glimpse of the storm brewing inside, an uncontrollable fury bound to surface again. His bond with his mother was a fragile thread woven with longing and resentment. Every time she abandoned him with relatives, the young boy hardened a little more. Each reunion was colder, more distant. The love he craved dissolving into suspicion and anger. In later years, psychologists would describe such fractures as seeds of detachment, patterns that shadowed every relationship he would attempt to build. At night, when silence fell over the alpine village, Jack's mind filled with whispers only he could hear. The moaning wind outside his window became the soundtrack of abandonment. The shadows crawling across his ceiling were not playful shapes but omens, signaling a darker destiny waiting just beyond his childhood. These formative years, shaped by neglect, loneliness, and sudden bursts of violence, became the foundation of a life that would spiral into infamy. As one criminologist later wrote, a child starved of love arms himself with rage against the world. Jack Unterweger's journey into darkness had already begun. By 17, Jack's life had outgrown the narrow lanes of his alpine village. His mother had drifted away to other towns, leaving him to shuffle between distant relatives until even those ties frayed. What had once been childhood shyness hardened into restless energy. Petty thefts, drunken scuffles, broken windows, local police reports marked him as the boy always in trouble. At night he prowled near train stations, jingling the few coins in his pocket, pretending to plan a future that felt like a blank page. Beneath the facade lingered humiliation and a simmering anger, a sense that the world owed him something it had never given. One bleak winter evening, in a smoky bar near Innsbruck, Jack struck up a conversation with a young woman. Her laugh was light, momentarily silencing the ache inside him. Two strangers, bound by chance, left together when the night had thinned the crowd. Yet Jack's wounds were too deep, his fury too close to the surface. Under the pallid moon, along a lonely forest road, the whispers in his mind grew louder. Breath against the cold, crunch of snow, and then silence. Irrevocable silence. He returned to the village as though nothing had occurred, slipped into the bar again for another drink, and the next morning blended with travelers at the station. Inside, however, a door had opened, a threshold crossed. The raw, intoxicating sense of power that comes with taking a life would not be forgotten. Days later, newspapers printed a small notice: young woman missing, last seen near Forest Road. Jack's name was never mentioned, rumors swirled, suspicions faded. For Jack, the event was a pivot, innocence fully shed, replaced by a dark, exhilarating knowledge that the world no longer looked the same. The night on the forest road refused to fade from memory. Though no immediate arrest followed, rumors clung to Jack. Over the years his record thickened: petty theft, violent brawls, small-time extortion. Crime had become not an accident, but an orbit he could no longer escape. In the spring of 1974, the body of a young woman was discovered near Vienna. Witness statements placed Jack at a tavern with her hours before. Bar patrons recalled a heated exchange, a sudden departure. Investigators quietly circled his name, gathering fragments that formed a grim mosaic. At dawn one morning, officers burst into his rented room. Jack opened the door calmly, as though conceding to a fate long written. The interrogation room reeked of stale smoke and fluorescent fatigue. Jack denied, deflected, then stumbled under the weight of inconsistencies. Witnesses multiplied. Prosecutors built their narrative, a cold-blooded predator. The defense countered with the story of an abandoned boy lost to circumstance. In the hushed courtroom, only the muffled sobs of the victim's family pierced the air. The gavel struck thrice, life imprisonment. Jack lowered his gaze, the faintest curl of a smile tugging at his lips. Whether resignation or defiance, no one could tell. Austria's justice system had sealed his destiny behind stone and steel. Prison life arrived like exile. Concrete walls, uniformed routines. The echo of doors clanging shut each evening. Freedom now belonged to another universe. Hours passed with Jack staring at the ceiling, tracing cracks like constellations. Yet amid the desolation flickered a stubborn ember: survival. Some inmates surrendered, others resisted. Jack sensed another path, an escape not through tunnels, but through words. The journey had yet to begin, but the hunger to redefine himself was already stirring. The first year of his life sentence was a suspended animation. Each dawn arrived with the rattle of steel doors, the same impassive guard, the same cold slab of concrete. From his narrow window, the sky appeared only as thin strips of blue behind iron bars. Even the seasons seemed to lose their color here. At first, Jack drifted between anger, denial, and despair. The echo of boots on the corridor floor, the distant clang of chains at night, all merged with memories of failure and guilt, denying him sleep. Survival demanded a choice. An older inmate gestured toward the library. In here, you either harden your fists or bury your head in books. That's how you stay sane. Jack stepped timidly into the prison library. Dust-laden shelves groaned under volumes long untouched. Opening a novel, he inhaled the faint musk of old paper. It whispered of places beyond walls. The idea of writing began as an idle notion, then sharpened into necessity. He requested a notebook and a pen. The first lines trembled onto the page: breathing behind iron doors means befriending shadows. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months. Writing consumed him. He chronicled fragments of his childhood, drafted poems, explored the contours of longing. Silence in the cell became his muse. Prison officials noticed his discipline and curiosity, granting him permission to submit pieces to small literary competitions. Slowly, his poems filtered beyond the prison walls, appearing in obscure journals. A myth sprouted in Austrian literary circles, the tale of a man reborn through art. Jack reveled in the persona he was crafting, a soul resurrected by ink and paper. Yet the words, though elegant, veiled a deeper truth. Behind every line lurked questions: was this redemption, or merely a mask? No one, at the time, could discern the difference. The first year of his life sentence was a suspended animation. Each dawn arrived with the rattle of steel doors, the same impassive guard, the same cold slab of concrete. From his narrow window, the sky appeared only as thin strips of blue behind iron bars. Even the seasons seemed to lose their color here. At first, Jack drifted between anger, denial, and despair. The echo of boots on the corridor floor, the distant clang of chains at night, all merged with memories of failure and guilt, denying him sleep. Survival demanded a choice. An older inmate gestured toward the library. In here, you either harden your fists or bury your head in books. That's how you stay sane. Jack stepped timidly into the prison library. Dust-laden shelves groaned under volumes long untouched. Opening a novel, he inhaled the faint musk of old paper. It whispered of places beyond walls. The idea of writing began as an idle notion, then sharpened into necessity. He requested a notebook and a pen. The first lines trembled onto the page. Breathing behind iron doors means befriending shadows. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into months. Writing consumed him. He chronicled fragments of his childhood, drafted poems, explored the contours of longing. Silence in the cell became his muse. Prison officials noticed his discipline and curiosity, granting him permission to submit pieces to small literary competitions. Slowly, his poems filtered beyond the prison walls, appearing in obscure journals. A myth sprouted in Austrian literary circles, the tale of a man reborn through art. Jack reveled in the persona he was crafting, a soul resurrected by ink and paper. Yet the words, though elegant, veiled a deeper truth. Behind every line lurked questions: was this redemption, or merely a mask? No one, at the time, could discern the difference. By the early 1980s, an unlikely name rippled through Austrian literary circles: inmate Jack Unterweger. The poems and autobiographical fragments he composed behind bars captivated readers who saw in them evidence of an inner metamorphosis. When his first collection was published, critics praised the verses for their stark sincerity, the unguarded voice of a man laid bare. Radio programs and literary journals ran features titled "A New Voice Rising from Prison." Letters poured in, journalists sought interviews, cultural societies requested his presence, even if only by correspondence. Prison administrators embraced the narrative. Jack became their model inmate, good conduct reports. Participation in workshops, even hosting small writing seminars for fellow prisoners. The image was powerful: chains replaced by quills, rage refined into art. He was no longer a statistic in the penal system but the embodiment of rehabilitation's promise. Society, ever eager for tales of redemption, saw in Jack proof that art could wash away guilt. He nurtured that belief, crafting each line to suggest transcendence, burying the specter of his violent past under eloquence. Words became his parole petition, each stanza a step toward imagined freedom. In 1985, excerpts of his work were read at a literary festival, propelling his story into national headlines. Articles hailed his moral rebirth, dubbing him a living testament to the power of art. From his cell, Jack gazed upward at the sliver of sky, daring to believe that the world beyond the walls might one day be his again. Jack's literary ascent appeared miraculous to the outside world. Poetry collections, glowing profiles, headlines dubbing him the emblem of rehabilitation. Yet behind the sheen, whispers persisted: could a man's past truly be erased by ink? During his years inside, Jack meticulously reconstructed his identity. The label killer seemed to dissolve with every polished stanza. Some guards, however, sensed something unnerving behind his calm gaze. Fellow inmates respected but kept their distance, his courtesy felt measured, his inner depth unreadable. At times, he would pause mid-walk in the yard, eyes fixed on the horizon, a cryptic smile flickering, as public fascination swelled. Media chased the narrative of miraculous redemption. Permissions for book signings were debated, certain politicians championed him as proof that the justice system could heal. In letters, Jack declared, "Art has transformed me. Confronting the shadows of my past is my only gateway to the future." Readers found hope in these lines, but at night, when moonlight carved pale bars on the cell wall, memories resurfaced, his first killing, fantasies of escape, the pulse of darker impulses. They had not vanished, merely slipped between sentences. This duality widened the chasm between public persona and private truth. By the late 1980s, Jack's name had become cultural currency. Universities invited him to speak, by correspondence. Documentaries extolled his moral journey. Society, unwilling to look at the shadow, sanctified the light. Jack recognized this blindness and leveraged it, each accolade another rung on the ladder toward eventual freedom. Freedom transformed Jack Unterweger into a media darling. Austrian newspapers hailed him as the living proof of redemption, while literary panels and book fairs embraced him as a cultural curiosity. Television producers invited him to speak on juvenile crime prevention. Jack played the role flawlessly, embodying the man who had transcended his past, yet beneath the applause lay a void. Every headline, every interview left an echoing silence in which old memories stirred, the sting of childhood violence, the electric rush of his first murder, the urges he had long buried within prison walls. These specters had not vanished, they merely waited. Jack's influence soon extended beyond literature. He contributed columns to major Austrian and German newspapers, and, ironically, consulted on crime documentaries about violence against women. Some proclaimed, who better to analyze crime than one who has lived it? In 1991, Jack embarked on a press tour that spanned Europe and the United States, Los Angeles, Miami, New York. Papers replayed his tale, from crime to art, a journey of rebirth. But in the margins of this glowing narrative, women, often sex workers, were disappearing, their lives extinguished in alleys and backstreets. In Los Angeles, under the hum of neon and the thrum of traffic, Jack prowled the city at night under the guise of research, interviewing women for articles. Police registers scarcely noted the missing, their stories were invisible. In the darkness, Jack's old hunger stirred, an echo returning to life. Jack's American interlude fed both his public persona and his inner darkness. Los Angeles police sifted through scattered cases of missing sex workers, while Jack immersed himself deeper into that world, cloaked in the respectability of field research. By day, he lounged in hotel cafes, sipping espresso, musing aloud about interviews to come. The press lauded his courage in venturing into the city's underbelly. Yet by night, hunter and prey merged into a deadly dance. The killings bore chilling signatures, ligature marks, strangulation, victims primarily marginalized women with scant police protection. Initially, detectives failed to connect the dots. Jack, meticulous and calculating, orchestrated each act as if composing a scene, preserving his duality with unnerving precision. Articles still appeared under his byline, literary salons entertained his reflections, and Austrian admirers continued celebrating their rehabilitated son. Few suspected that beneath the surface, an old predator had awakened, cloaked in eloquence. By 1992, patterns emerged across borders. The FBI analyzed Los Angeles cases while Austrian investigators flagged eerily similar homicides. International collaboration intensified as flight logs, hotel receipts, and witness reports began to intersect. Jack's transatlantic movements mirrored the timeline of deaths. Returning to Vienna for a television appearance, Jack found himself under quiet surveillance. Interrogations followed, evidence converging, a mosaic pointing squarely to him. Phone records, itineraries, victim profiles, the net drew tight. During his 1994 trial, Jack maintained a mask of calm. The courtroom brimmed with press, hanging on his denial, "I am a writer, not a monster." Yet expert testimony, forensic evidence, and pattern analysis aligned. The verdict, guilty, sentenced to life without parole. The next morning, Jack was discovered hanging in his cell, a makeshift noose of bed sheets around his neck. Headlines screamed, from literary luminary to infamy. Jack Unterweger's saga remains a cautionary tale, a collision of society's hunger for redemption with the unyielding pull of hidden darkness.